I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear me over the traffic, but behind me is just one of many vacant lots, probably for sale. I don't know at the moment, but it's just an example of what's currently an empty lot. There are lots all over towns, all around, that are completely grown up, and I'd like to be able to make use of some of them. My idea is community gardens. Now I've been involved in community gardening off and on for several years. I've been involved with at least 3 in 2 different cities. One was in Marion, Arkansas, just across the river from Memphis, and I pretty much did it by myself. I did have initially one gentleman helping, a pastor who helped get the land. It was city land. Later on, I had another lady. She mainly came out when there was nobody else there as a way to just get away from people and stuff like that, and that was great. When I had to move to the Jonesboro area, I started helping the city councilman with his garden, and I respect the heck out of the guy. I really respect the heck out of this guy. But our gardening styles didn't really mesh, mainly because I didn't understand what the goal of the garden was. He had 2 different plots, and they were both fenced in, and the one I was helping with was fenced in, but he didn't want anybody in the garden other than him or me or somebody, you know, with us. He didn't want it just open so that anybody and everybody could come out and pick or anything like that. So I started working on it, trying to kind of turn the soil around, do some ways of gardening he wasn't real used to, and this is always a multi-year project. I don't believe in instant gardens. If you're doing instant gardens, you're probably using a lot of chemicals, synthetic fertilizers, and things that are not healthy for the soil. But when I finally got to the point that I was growing, actually getting a harvest, I didn't know what to do with it. So there wasn't really a purpose, it didn't seem like, other than just having a garden. And then eventually I got in with another group, and if you've watched very many videos on this particular channel, Garden Jonesboro, to be obvious, and I mean, I went in guns blazing and got to be in control of the one vegetable garden. All other gardens were ornamental. And I thought I was fairly clear that this was going to be a 3 to 5 year project. I'm going to pick this up so I can walk around. A 3 to 5 year project, turning the garden around, not only in how the gardening was done, the methods, repairing the soil, things of that nature. I'm going to put this up in my truck. It's easier, I can lean on the truck now. But the methods of gardening, the purpose of the gardening, the ethics of the gardening. And I documented well over 200 hours I spent out there, and that was not near all of them. And I just kept butting heads. We couldn't seem to get on the same page on what I consider some extremely important issues. The most important issue being, what was the purpose of the garden? Because I've learned a phrase a long time ago: the purpose of an organization, whatever it is what it does, what it actually does, not what it says it does. Hopefully the two are the same, but I find that's frequently not the case. So the purpose of these style gardens, where there is land and it is planted out, there's no fences, and anybody can come and pick. So on the surface, the purpose of the garden is to grow food for the community. Okay? Now, an ornamental garden, the purpose of the garden is to look pretty. And essentially, you know you've achieved the goal when you drive by and it's pretty. That's about all the metric you need. But if you're growing food for the community, what's the metric? The metric is how much are you growing? What are you growing, possibly? And is it making it to people? Is it benefiting people? Is it going home with them? And is it ending up on plates and in bellies? Well, how do you know that? Well, you can do all the harvesting yourselves, measuring it, and other metrics, how much time, how much money in, resources in, harvest out, and then distribute it in some way, much like a food pantry, so that you know how much was grown, how much was harvested, how much was distributed to how many people or how many families. And at that point, I mean, you stop measuring, because you don't know how much actually ended up on the plate and in the belly and how much was thrown away. Another way would be have specific harvest times, open the gates, because it needs to be gated, so that, because things picked after dark, you won't be able to measure. And then either as people harvest or whatever, it's measured as it goes out the door. Again, you have an idea roughly of how much was harvested and how many people or families were benefiting from it. None of this was being done there. And I asked multiple people multiple times, and they could not even conceive of a way to have any rough estimate as to how much was harvested and how many people were benefited, or even why that would even be of any import. So to me, the vegetable garden was just another ornamental garden. They hoped that some people, they might hear roundabout, they might hear through other people, third party, that some people had been harvesting, or they may see some evidence of something being harvested. But that was kind of the end of it. Well, how do you know if you're having an effect? If the actual goal is to raise healthy food and get it in people's bellies, especially like kids' bellies and needy people's bellies, if you don't monitor and measure, you have no idea whether you're having an actual effect or not, and if any changes you make are having a benefit, increasing the benefit or decreasing the benefit, having any effect. I came up with a way to get some rough estimates, and they just couldn't understand it. They didn't agree with it. It was too different, whatever. We just could not get on the same page on the very fun, regardless of how the gardening was done and what was being grown. We couldn't even get on the same page as to what the true goal of the garden was and how to measure that. So I've been involved in 3 different community gardens where you just have an open lot and you plant stuff and anybody can gather from it. And I'm not totally against it. I just think it's not very effective or efficient, because you have no idea if you're having a benefit or not, or if you're doing a lot of waste. And I don't believe in waste. I mean, I don't know whose land this is, but let's say it was mine. I could plant the whole thing out. I could easily do that. But if only 10% of it, even if I did my measurements, if only 10% of it actually got harvested and ended up in somebody's belly, then there's a lot of seed, a lot of time. If I'm using equipment, a lot of gas or diesel. There's a lot of input that was wasted because 90% of it did not meet the goal, did not end up in somebody's belly. So I would rather scale it back to 10% and have all of it harvested, so there's no waste. So why do I go through all of that? That's just to kind of explain what is typically thought of as a community garden in this area. But it's not the only type of community garden. There are many types of community gardens. Most people, at least that I've met around here, focus on the gardening part rather than on the first word, which is the community part. And that's the part I want to focus on, is the community part. So my current goal, and I've kind of had to put everything on hold for about 4, almost 5 years because of a family situation, caring for some family, and hopefully things are going to change in a way that I will have my life back and time back again. So that's why I'm trying to start this effort again. I would like to start up a community garden that's more of a British or European allotment system. If you've ever heard of an allotment, that is a parcel of land similar to what's behind me. It's fenced in fairly well for security, and it is parceled out into different parcels. They may be the size, as small as the size of a single vehicle parking, you know, your driveway where you park 1 or 2 cars. It could be 50 by 50, depending on how much room you've got, how many parcels you want to do, different sizes and stuff. And each of those plots is allotted to an individual or a family. Therefore, the allotment system. It's actually required, I believe, by law in Britain, especially after the World War II and stuff, as the cities grew. If there is land that is owned by the city, by the council, that's not being used for anything else, and there's enough people wanting to put gardens there, they are required by law to make that available to them. Now, if you do that, it's not going to be free, because people don't value what's free. They just don't. So it is rented. Now, there can be ways of mitigating some of it. It could be rented for money. It could be rented for time in the garden, helping do with the things that need to be done for the whole garden. It could be subsidized or something, but there is a fee. There is a rental. You are renting this allotment. And it is your garden. Maybe you live in an apartment and don't have access to a place to garden, or you're in a rental house where they won't let you garden. Or you just want to garden around other gardeners. You want to garden in a community of other gardeners. Thus the community garden. Of course, there are going to be rules with that. You've got to make sure you keep it clean and tidy. You know, regardless of the gardening style, which may look somewhat unkempt to some people, it is still being done. It is still being managed, and there's a reason for it. It's not just left completely to grow wild, you know, for a year. So there'll be rules on that. There may be rules into how you can garden, as far as, is it going to be conventional with all the chemicals and sprays and additives and fertilizers and all that? Is it going to be organic standards? Is it going to be more strict than that? I would prefer, since I'm wanting to do healthy food, no chemicals. It can have an educational component. So maybe there are people who have never gardened and they want a small allotment to get started, but they don't know how to garden. Well, they can learn from the other gardeners, thus the community of gardeners, but we could also have classes. Not only for the people who have plots, but for anybody, open to anybody. And the goal is not only to have all the plots in the area, in that particular allotment plot, rented and being used, but that's a way of educating more and more people how to garden, and with the hopes that some of them will eventually, if they have the availability around their house or wherever they live, be able to garden there, either instead of or in addition to their allotment. So it's an outreach, it's an education, it's an outreach method. And with that, you don't necessarily have to see if you're having an effect, measure how much is grown, how much is eaten, how many families. You just know you've got, 50 plots, and they're all actively being gardened by people who are paying for them. Now, what does the money, the rent money go for? Well, the rent money goes for upkeep. If there is, like in this plot here, if this were to be turned into such an allotment garden, there's probably municipal water and sewer here. So we could have a bathroom, that would have bathroom facilities available there for the gardeners while they're here. If you don't have access to that, it might have to be porta potties that get pumped out and changed out and cleaned every once in a while. So there's going to be money for that. Irrigation water, if you hook into rural or municipal water. Maybe there is a garden manager who's here a certain amount of time, on site, educators on site, electricity if it's not solar, but if it's solar, who's going to fund that system? maybe there's a decent organic compost maker in Memphis. We're in Jonesboro, and in order to get a decent load at a decent price, people need to go together. Well, part of your fee may be 1 or 2 or 3 times a year there is a big truckload of good organic compost delivered to the allotment, and everybody gets a certain share of it. Or it's available at a much reduced price to help reimburse it. You know, so there can be insurance. If there, you know, anytime you've got people coming onto a plot to land owned by somebody else, there's liability insurance on that. So there are operating costs to that, and that is where the majority of the fees and the rental fees go to. Maybe having to clean up a plot that's been abandoned, haul off trash, things of that nature. What I'm looking for right now is not necessarily land, because there's no reason for me to find land to do this if I'm gonna have to do it all by myself. What I'm trying to do is get the idea out there and look for people. I'd like to look for as many people as possible, but definitely I'd like to find 3 to 5 people who really get it and are of like mind and are willing to commit to this, not only to form kind of a board, and then when going out for land, looking for land, either to buy, to rent, to do, ask the city or some corporation to do a long-term lease or something. It's a lot more persuasive if you've got 3 to 5 people committed to it than if it's a single person. Also, with about 5 people, we could consider doing a 501(c), which would make it even more legitimate, and I think would go a long way. So I'm not really a huge fan of getting involved with the government, but I think in this case a 501(c) would make a lot of sense and would be very helpful. But you've got to have, I think it's at least 3 people to form that. And again, I've been in too many organizations and clubs to know if everybody's not truly on the same page with the same goals, then it falls apart quickly. So I really want to be careful finding people that are committed and on the same page. So that's kind of my pitch at the moment. As I hopefully in this January right now, 2026, in the next week, 2 weeks, month, hopefully we'll again have a lot of free time. Well, not free time, but have my life back. I've got plenty of things to keep me busy. But this is high up on my list of importance, is finding people that would be interested in committing to helping start an allotment style community garden, find the land, get it up and running, use it to promote healthy food gardening and teach people, and see how it goes. If it goes over really well, you know, if we were able to find a piece of land similar to this size and had 50 allotments and they get sold out, and after a year or so it's obvious there is more demand, then we go looking for another one and another one. Maybe have them close to areas of need, whether that's an apartment complex or whether that's an area of town that there is a need, and people aren't going to drive from one area of town to a ritzy frou-frou area to learn how to garden. But if it's within walking distance, they will. And then maybe they start using, instead of mowing their lawn, they start growing their own food. Maybe they turn that into a small market garden where not only are they growing their own healthy food, but they're actually gaining an income and supporting their neighbors by growing healthy food to sell to their neighbors, you know, so they could grow that way, kind of franchise it out even maybe. But that's kind of the goal. And if you're interested, please contact me. And I'm truly looking for people willing to get their hands dirty and sweat. It's great to have likes on a Facebook page or something of that nature, but it means that likes don't have calories and nutrition. Likes don't operate a shovel or a spade or a hoe or a rake. Likes don't spread compost and wood chip. I'm looking for workers. I'm looking for committed workers. And I don't care your age. I don't care if you're in high school. You need to be probably 21 or at least 18, if not 21 or above, to help start a 501(c) and serve on a board. But I don't care if you're retired. But I want it to also be metric driven. I want what we say we do and what we actually do to be the one and the same thing. So that when they say, what's the purpose of the garden? We say it is to grow food, and we can tell them how much we grew and how many people it went to. Or the purpose of the garden is to provide space and knowledge and some expertise and motivation for people to do their own gardening. And the metric is, we have 50 plots, they're all being rented and they're all actively being gardened, and there's probably 100 to 150 people actively out here doing the garden. Those are hard metrics. What we say we do and what we're actually doing, are the same. If you're interested, let me know. I've got information down below in the video. I've got some links to what an allotment garden is and some other things down below. And feel free to share. Go ahead and like this video if you want, because it will get a little bit more traction if more people are seeing it and sharing it. And most importantly, get in contact with me. We can do Zoom meetings, and once I know absolutely that I've got free time, I could try to find a space maybe at the library, and we can start having in-person meetings. Just give me your thoughts and let me know. Thanks.